Right, so let's also speak of some of the other reactions that have poured in. NATO Chief Mark Rutte said that Trump's return will turbocharge defense spending and production at the alliance. Do you think that's true?
Listen, NATO defense spending has gone way up ever since the Russians went into Ukraine in 2014 and seized Crimea. It went up under Trump, it went up under Biden, it went up under Obama. Now we're likely to see further increases. Trump is asking for 5% of GDP on defense rather than 2% of GDP. You're not going to get 5%, but he will push allies in both Europe and Asia to increase defense spending. He did, as a candidate and as president, talk about withdrawing from NATO or perhaps ending alliance relationships with South Korea and with Japan. I don't see that happening. And that's simply because we live in a world where Russia has invaded Ukraine, where China is the pacing threat. Under those circumstances, it's hard for me to imagine that President Trump, even if he would like to, is going to withdraw from these critical alliances. So increased defense spending, yes. Dismantle alliances, no.
All right. Of course, let me just also take our viewers through some of the other reactions that have poured in so that we can discuss this further. That's what NATO Chief Mark Rutte had said. Israel has said that the best days are to come. I believe that working together again, we will raise the US-Israel alliance to even greater heights. The best days of our alliance are yet to come. Now, Dr. Kapchan, we know that Trump has been taking the credit for getting the Gaza-Israel-Hamas ceasefire through. Of course, it's in its first phase right now, very crucial phase. How things pan out going forward are entirely reliant on how things pan out in these initial 16 days. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, I think you're 100% right there that this is a good start, but the difficult issues really don't begin to get addressed until we're in a few weeks in. And those difficult issues are, is Israel going to withdraw from the Gaza territory? Are they going to leave the border between Gaza and Egypt unpatrolled? Are they going to keep their troops on a buffer zone? These are the tough issues, and I think the negotiators couldn't resolve them, so they set them aside. So this is an overdue ceasefire, an exchange of hostages for prisoners, but there's still a lot of hard work to come. I do think that it's not inconceivable that when the fighting stops in Gaza, in Lebanon, we have a new regime. The Assad regime in Syria has collapsed. Iran is vulnerable. We have a political landscape in the region that could potentially clear the way for some kind of broader regional settlement, a normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, for example. I think Trump is going to push for that. And even though he is a quote-unquote pro-Israel president, I think Netanyahu or whoever comes after him should be ready for pressure from Trump to make a deal. As he said in his speech an hour ago, I want to be known as a peacemaker. And so I think in Ukraine, in the Middle East, he's going to be pushing hard for diplomatic breakthroughs.
All right. Now, of course, this is the big question, I believe. This inaugural address was supposed to set the tone for the next 4 years of Trump 2.0. So what's your outlook on that? What do you think the next 4 years are going to look like? Is it going to be chaos? Is there going to be a middle ground that the Democrats and Republicans can perhaps reach? Because just a short while ago, Trump did say that I told Chuck Schumer that I wish we could get along because we should.
Well, judging by this speech, I would say I look at the next 4 years with worry and anxiety, because this was not a speech that was aimed at reaching out across the aisle and finding bipartisan cooperation. That having been said, let's give Trump the benefit of the doubt, give him some time to get into office. I think there will be less chaos than in Trump 1.0, in part because Trump's been there before. The people around him are more loyal and more ideologically compatible with him. So I think there will be more direction and more discipline in the White House. But the reality is that he has relatively small margins in the House and in the Senate. Presidents need to work with Congress, and in some cases that will mean needing to work with the Democrats, because he needs 60 votes in the Senate to get through the filibuster. He doesn't have 60 Republican seats. And as a consequence, the realities of governing in the United States will push him to try to work with Democrats. That having been said, this was a hard-hitting, very partisan initial launch to Trump 2.0. And as a consequence, I think one has to look at the next 4 years with a certain amount of worry.
All right. I just once again wanted to come back to a point that you were making earlier, and that is to truly understand the role of tech magnates in Trump 2.0 administration. What are we really looking at here, and what's going to be the immediate fallout?
Well, I think in the end of the day, what they're looking for are the same thing that most corporate leaders are looking for, and that is tax cuts on corporations and deregulation, so that corporations can basically do what they want to with a minimum of red tape. And there were initial efforts during the Biden administration to not regulate the high-tech industry, but to hold high-tech responsible for misinformation, to try to prevent the big tech companies from engaging in monopolistic behavior, and to put forward a voluntary compliance list for the development and deployment of AI. And I think that now we're going to see a president who says, hey, it's the wild, wild west. Hands off. Everybody can do whatever they want to. And I do think that that's a mistake, because one of the reasons that the country has become so polarized is misinformation on social media. We don't know what the geopolitical and political implications of AI, artificial intelligence, will be, but I do think we need at least a measure of government regulation so that the corporate leaders are happy with Trump. I'm not sure that the results of tax cuts and deregulation are going to be good for the American people and good for the American economy.
Dr. Captain, I also want to talk to you about what he said about officially from here on there will only be 2 genders. What do you think he's trying to do by saying this in his inaugural address, and what will be the implications of this?
Well, during the campaign, he and J.D. Vance, who's now the vice president, very much ran on an anti-woke agenda, portraying the Democrats as having been hijacked, if you will, by the progressive far left on gender issues, on reproductive rights, on a whole host of other social issues. One of the most powerful messages that ran on TV during the late part of the campaign was, Kamala Harris is for they, them, President Trump is for you. Basically saying, oh, those Democrats, they believe in binary gender. And Trump was saying, hey, there are 2 kinds of people, male and female. And this, again, is very much catering to a more conservative base, attempting to say we're moving to a much more traditional conservative agenda and away from the progressive agenda that the Democrats embraced.